Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special edition of the Lebanon Redevelopment Commission. We will go ahead and call ourselves to order, and we will begin as we do with each meeting, which is with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Thank you very much. And just for the record, we do have all members present. So thank you very much for making it to our special meeting. We do only have one item on the agenda tonight under new business, which is Resolution 2024-04. And I believe Mr. Bontrager is going to give us a little bit of background here on what we're contemplating this evening.
Thank you, Corey. Members of the board, I'll just give you a little bit of background here. This is a resolutions before you this evening related to the Fieldhouse project, Hickory Junction Fieldhouse. As you all recall, we have approached the infrastructure associated with the overall Hickory Junction development in two phases. The first phase was essentially to get the infrastructure in to serve the Fieldhouse itself. That was about $12 million worth of infrastructure that was bonded a couple years ago in 2022, and that the RDC was a part of. And it was always assumed that there would be a second phase of infrastructure to finish out the development in order to develop all the outlots and the properties surrounding that Fieldhouse project. Certainly over the last couple of years, the total cost of that infrastructure has changed, both with the addition of some requests from NDOT and then also just with the fact that supply and demand has caused the cost to implement infrastructure to go up. So we have about another $12 million worth of infrastructure that needs to be funded as part of this phase two project that will allow all those outlots to develop and bring in all that great AV that helps pay taxes, to pay bonds and all that good stuff. So it's a little bit of a cycle going on here. And so the Cardin Associates folks came to us and talked about how to deliver that phase two. Their initial request was for a RDC bond, lease rental bond, to cover the entire cost of that $12 million. And we said that that's not something we were going to be able to have the appetite for. And so the compromise was a $6 million bond, which the RDC did just issue just a few months ago to cover half of that cost. The other half of that cost was going to be covered with a loan that was going to be secured by Cardin Associates. And the structure of it is an interest-only loan, and the bank has requested a commitment from the Redevelopment Commission to cover the interest-only cost for that 3-year loan. This could be as much as a little over $500,000 per year, but that deal with the bank also includes a requirement that as they sell properties within the development, a percentage of the proceeds from that sale has to go to buying down the principal on this loan. So over the 3-year period, we do anticipate that that principal will reduce. Thus, the commitment by the RDC to make the tax only or the interest only payments will reduce as well. And we do know they've got a number of tenants that are lined up, essentially just waiting for this infrastructure project to start. So, essentially the schedule for them to be able to start as well. So we do anticipate over the first 12 to 18 months, we will see that there are land sales and that principal will decrease. But what we need as part of this process tonight is for the Redevelopment Commission, and that this resolution spells out, and it's actually a grant agreement with the Community Development Corporation, the Lebanon CDC. And so the CDC will actually be the entity that enters into the agreements with Cardin Associates to make those payments. And it will be funded by a grant of available TIF dollars from the Redevelopment Commission. So that's what's before you tonight. I'll kind of turn it over to Rob to talk about. There's a few things that have occurred since our meeting last week to discuss this, where we stand on that and where we stand on the resolution and the agreements. But that's the general structure. It's to cover the phase two infrastructure costs. And the commitment is to make those interest payments on the interest-only loan that CARD has secured for the phase two infrastructure. So with that, I'd be answering any questions about that before Rob goes into further details on the resolutions and agreements.
Any questions from the commission before we pass it over to Rob?
No.
So Rob, if you want to give us a little bit of info and insight, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President and Commission. So as a follow-up our working session from last week, we prepared this resolution 2024-04 that would authorize this commission providing or entering into a grant agreement with the Community Development Corporation. And as Mr. Bontrager indicated, that has certain limitations, and in amounts not to exceed the $1,542,750. During our working session, hearing from the developer, Curtin Associates, it's believed and hoped that that amount will not be needed and will not be used. So, and we would also have a maximum annual amount that we will incorporate into the grant agreement. Now, we prepared drafts of those, so a grant agreement and then also a disbursement agreement in the resolution that you've seen. The bank followed up, Card and Associates Bank reached out to us a little bit ago today just with some additional information. One of the things that we talked about at our working session is we haven't seen any of the loan documents from the bank here. And so to the extent that anything would substantively change, if this commission were to move forward and authorize the resolution and authorize the president to move forward with this, if anything would substantively change, we would anticipate and require that we would come back before this commission and address whatever may be needed at that time. So one of the things that the bank, Card and Associates Bank, indicated is they had some questions about the amount the interest that would be required by the CDC. And so we need to flush that out tomorrow with them. We still haven't yet solidified that from them, but whether or not that they would require a reimbursement on a monthly basis as what the developer was indicated at our working session, or like a one-time annual payment. And so we have a call scheduled tomorrow with Baker Tilly to go over some of the nuances with that. So that's in essence what has changed since Thursday afternoon, our working session, is the bank just indicating that they don't have the documents yet. They're going to get those to us. They anticipate getting those to us, and then any other additional requirements they may need. So, and I'm happy to answer anything as it relates to the resolution before I read it, but it in essence summarizes what we talked about again at our working session.
Any questions?
Is there any issues with a single payment versus a monthly?
I think maybe it's just the complexities of if and or when the principal is reduced by a payment, then we've already prepaid the entire annual amount. So is there some process by which the CDC, thus the RDC, is reimbursed for the amount that wasn't needed? So I think we just need to work through that with Baker Tilly and the bank to understand.
But financially, I mean, it's
Financially,
really,
I don't think
no
it-
differences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more of the procedurally the differences but financially, no, I don't think there's any difference.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I think Baker Tilly just mentioned just how the money's flowing between the entities and just how that's accounted for. And just from an auditing perspective, we think the monthly actually is probably easier to track that, right? And frankly, we're not then overpaying and someone else is getting interest on our funds, right, versus us. So it's
Not have to worry about paybacks and all that. Yeah.
Correct, yeah. So it's cleaner just from a process standpoint.
Any other questions?
So our preference then is the monthly, since we do have the agreement of drawing down the interest payment or as new properties come on board as anticipated.
Yeah,
And that may be more of an agreement between the RDC and or between the CDC and the bank on how the CDC pays it out versus, maybe it's a one-time payment from the RDC to the CDC, but then the CDC is the one that's then allocating out monthly based on what's been sold and paid for. Yeah. Makes sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the commission? One of the other items that did come up, kind of as Rob alluded to, was there's some questions on the dollar amount that we were looking at during the working session versus looking at in the most recent communication from the bank. By my calculations, so the ordinance in front of us that you've received copies of or pardon me, not an ordinance, it's a grant agreement. The grant agreement contemplates the total dollar amount of $6,050,000, which goes to a interest not to exceed 1.542 750. The newest number that has been floated to us was up to 6.6 million, which would be a change to 1.7 million in interest payments over that 3-year life. So we have, and again, that is worst case, assuming that it draws out for the full 3 years and all that fun stuff. So the question then becomes, if this commission is more comfortable moving towards the numbers that you have seen already in writing, or if anyone would like to make an amendment to increase those numbers to those worst case scenarios that have been most recently quoted. Just to play that out, if you are interested in moving that to the 6.6 million and 1.7 million worst case scenario, we could make those motions and change the grant agreement in this meeting, and then it would be a not to exceed moving forward. If we choose to just continue at the 1.54, we could also do just that, and we would come back before this commission if it were to change to that 1.7.
That would maybe just a question I would pose to Rob. If we stay with 1.54, I assume that means we'd have to return, because that's a substantive change. You go to 1.7. I guess if I were to offer a recommendation, I would say we'd want to put it at the max amount so we don't have to, and then we can reduce it down if it's not needed. Or are you suggesting if we reduce it, it'd still have to come back?
No, I agree
Okay.
with what you said to the extent that we would prove what we talked about at the working session, what you've seen, and it increased. I would suggest and recommend we come back before this commission, as well as any other, again, material substantive changes.
So it kind of comes down from a commission standpoint, your level of comfort with those two numbers as a not to exceed. And again, that is worst case scenario, but we're at a not to exceed 1.542 million versus a not to exceed 1.70. Rough math from a banker. So
Again, Rob, what did you recommend? Increasing it now?
I think in order, if we're going to take action this evening, not have to come back. If the amount is 1.7 million, then we can authorize or we can amend the resolution in the grant agreement in an amount not to exceed what Mr. Coote said, 1.7 million in total, and break that out in 3 equal installments. And then I would also authorize the president of the commission, Mr. Coots, to work with the mayor and legal counsel in finalizing these documents with the bank. And again, to the extent that there are going to be substantive changes, we'll come back before you. I mean, and that's.
yeah. So I mean, ultimately, it does come down to the will of the commission. But if it does come back at 1.7 and we approve the 1.5, that's substantive. So we will be coming back with a new grant agreement and resolution. If it's approved not to exceed the 1.7 and it comes in at the 1.5, that wouldn't necessarily be true unless there were other substantive changes to the agreement.
Clarity, one more time, that basically 200,000, 200K increase would be for?
The most recent numbers quoted by the bank, they were quoted at 2/3, which was based on a number of 10 million as a whole, which brings the 2/3 number to 6.6 million, not 6.050 as we saw in our work session. So if it is that 6.6 million all in, then the maximum interest over that 3-year period would be the 1.7 million versus the 1.54.
Thank you.
Clear as mud. So the first question then would be, is there any motion pertaining to a change to the, it would first be the grant agreement? Or is there a motion to move forward with the grant agreement that was submitted to you guys previously, the entire commission?
I'll make a motion that we amend the original grant to allow a maximum of 1.7 million, and then the subsequent total dollar amount, I think, is 6.6 million. But with the understanding, so that's my motion at this time.
Okay, so that would be a motion to amend the dollar amounts on the grant agreement to 6.6 million total and not to exceed 1.7 million in interest payments for a 3-year period. So that is the motion on the table. That is simply in regards to the grant agreement. A second would not be approving the grant agreement. It would be approving the motion to amend. So do we have a second for the motion to amend?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. So that grant agreement is now amended to state a project cost of not to exceed 6.6 million and 1.7 million in interest payments over a 3-year period. So with the amended grant agreement, do we have any motions to accept said grant agreement as amended?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to accept the amended grant agreement to the CDC. Do we have a second?
Second.
We also have a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Whew. We did some heavy lifting on that one, guys. Thank you very much for kind of hanging with me through some of that math there live. So again, that amended agreement is now in effect. Any substantive changes will come before you. And then as an additional step, we're going to move on to the resolution that relates to the grant agreement that we just discussed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, Commission. And again, this resolution, again, in essence, is a summary of what you just approved, but it formalizes it in a resolution 2024-04, which again approves the grant to the Lebanon Community Development Corporation. And again, the RDC may provide financial assistance, including grants and loans to neighborhood development corporations. The Lebanon Community Development Corporation is a nonprofit corporation organized and operating pursuant to Indiana Code. The developer, as set forth in this resolution, and we go through in detail, we don't need to rehash it, but it has established the Field House project as well as the public infrastructure project. And it's all located at the corner of I-65 and State Road 39 in the city. And this commission's determined that a portion of the project requires financial assistance, and it's determined it's in the best interest of this commission to provide the grant to the CDC, which is in the form that you just approved. It's consistent with Indiana Code, and again, the RDC has determined it's in the best interest of this commission to enter into the grant agreement. So again, and therefore be it resolved that this commission will execute and deliver the grant agreement consistent with the terms of this resolution, and it will execute and deliver any other agreements, instruments, or other documents that are necessary in connection with the grant agreement. And again, the president of the RDC, upon the advice of council, which approval and satisfaction shall be evidenced by execution and delivery thereof by the president or vice president of the RDC. And the president is authorized to execute and deliver any and all other agreements to carry out the necessary intent of this resolution. So that's been read.
Thank you very much, Rob. So Resolution 2024-04 is officially read into the minutes. Any questions from the commission? All right, so I would then entertain a motion with regards to Resolution 2024-04.
I'll make that motion. We approve resolution number 2024-04.
Got a motion to approve. Do we have a second? A second from Keith. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Thank you very much, folks. That takes care of the new business. Just one quick update on other items. As recently as today, we've had some communication with regards to 124, 126 North Lebanon Street. And I'm happy to report it looks like we'll be bringing that settlement agreement to close in the next few days. So excited to move that project forward. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Rob, anything additional on that item? Okay, perfect. Anything else to come before the commission this evening?
Make a motion to adjourn.
We've got a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.